Retro gaming gets remembered through a soft filter. Pixel art, chiptune music, simpler times. But strip that filter away, and a lot of these games were built to hurt you. Not challenge you. Hurt you. And the punishment wasn't limited to one console. It showed up in arcades designed to eat your quarters, on the Atari 2600, before anyone really understood what a video game should feel like, on the NES during its most unforgiving years, and on the Genesis, where developers found new ways to make a single wrong move cost you everything you'd built. This is 10 retro games that punished every mistake. If you've got old scars from any of these consoles, hit subscribe right now. And stay through this one, because the top 2 spots on this list are going to start an argument, and we want you in the comments when it happens. Number 10, Gauntlet, 1985. Gauntlet, developed and published by Atari Games, hit arcades in 1985, and it's built on one of the most quietly brutal mechanics in gaming history. Your health doesn't just drop when you get hit, it drops constantly. Every second you're alive, your health ticks down, whether an enemy has touched you or not. That single design choice turns the entire game into a timer. A single credit buys you somewhere around 600 to 700 health points depending on how the cabinet was configured. And once that number hits 0, you're dead, no matter how well you've been playing. Gauntlet is frequently cited as one of the first arcade games to tie your progress directly to how much money you're willing to spend, rather than how skilled you actually are. That's the mistake this game punishes. Not a wrong move, just existing too long without feeding it more quarters. There's no way to play around it. You either pay or you die, and the game never pretends otherwise. Number 9, E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, 1982. E.T. for the Atari 2600 has a reputation that precedes it, and most of that reputation comes down to one design element: pits. The game's screens are covered in them, and touching even a single overlapping pixel of a pit sends you falling, often repeatedly, often right after you've climbed back out. Getting out of a pit requires precise positioning so that no part of your sprite touches the edge, which on 1982 hardware with imprecise controls was nearly impossible to do consistently. And every fall, every action, every step drains your energy meter. Fall enough times chasing phone parts across the map, and you'll run out of energy before you run out of patience. E.T. is often discussed as a symbol of the 1983 video game industry crash, a rushed release built in a matter of weeks. What that rush left behind is a game where the terrain itself is the primary threat. Not the aliens, not the enemies, just the ground under your feet. Number 8, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Dam Level, 1989. If you played this game on NES, you know exactly which stage we're talking about before we even say it. Stage 2. The Dam. Konami's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles drops you underwater with a simple task: defuse 8 bombs before a strict timer runs out. Simple on paper. In practice, you're swimming through a maze filled with electric seaweed, fighting controls that feel loose even by NES standards. Technical breakdowns of the game's code have shown the underwater current behaves almost randomly, pushing you off course in ways you can't predict or practice around. Players have documented taking damage from seaweed without any clear contact at all, which makes the level feel less like a challenge and more like the game cheating. The dam level became infamous, specifically because it hit so early. Stage 2. Most players hadn't even settled into the game's rhythm yet, and suddenly they're fighting a timer, a maze, and a control scheme that doesn't fully cooperate, all at once. Number 7. Shadowrun, 1994. Here's one that punishes mistakes in a completely different way than anything else on this list. Shadowrun on Sega Genesis, developed by Beam Software, starts you off genuinely weak. low-level street enemies can kill your character in 1 or 2 hits during the opening hours. And death in this game doesn't just cost you a life, it costs you money and progress. Dying sends you back with less cash than you had, forcing you to grind low-value missions just to afford the gear you need to survive the next encounter. It's a slow, resource-based punishment rather than an instant one. The game's matrix hacking sections make this worse. You're navigating hostile computer systems where aggressive programs, called Black IC, can damage you directly or destroy software you paid real in-game money to acquire. One wrong move in a hacking run can wipe out an investment that took hours to build up. Shadowrun doesn't kill you fast. It makes you pay for every mistake, slowly, over and over, until you've learned to stop making them. That's 5 entries built around resources, timers, and economies working against you. Now, we get into the games that punish you physically. The ones where a single bad input, not a bad decision, is what gets you. Number 6, Mega Man, 1987. The original Mega Man on NES has a reputation problem within its own franchise. Later entries in the series let you take damage while airborne over a hazard and use that hit to bounce past it safely. The 1987 original doesn't. Spikes kill you instantly, even during the brief invincibility frames, right after you've been hit by something else. Combine that with Mega Man's control feel in this specific game. He's noticeably looser than in sequels, sinking through the air faster, harder to place, precisely over narrow platforms lined with instant death spikes in Dr. Wily's fortress stages. And then there's the magnet beam problem. Wily's first fortress stage cannot be completed without an item called the magnet beam, which you have to have picked up from an earlier stage. Elic Man's stage, well before you ever reach Wily's fortress. Skip it, sell it, or simply not realize you need it, and you'll hit a wall you can't get past, with no in-game explanation for why. Number 5, Castlevania, 1986. Castlevania on NES built its entire difficulty philosophy around one mechanical decision. Once Simon Belmont jumps, that jump is locked. No mid-air correction, no adjusting. You committed the moment you left the ground, and whatever's waiting where you land is exactly what you're dealing with. Now, add knockback. Any hit you take sends you flying backward, hard, regardless of how much damage it actually deals. Near a pit or a narrow ledge, that knockback is a death sentence completely separate from the hit itself. Game design retrospectives have pointed out that this wasn't an accident. Every enemy placement in Castlevania is built specifically around the assumption that getting hit near an edge means falling to your death, turning ordinary enemies into genuine threats purely through positioning. That's the mistake Castlevania punishes, not poor combat. Poor positioning. You can fight perfectly and still die because of where you were standing when you got hit. Number 4, Ninja Gaiden. 3, The Ancient Ship of Doom, 1991. Ninja Gaiden 3 on NES is widely considered the hardest entry in its trilogy, and the reason comes down almost entirely to a localization decision. The North American release caps your continues at roughly 5, while also increasing enemy damage compared to the original Japanese version. Run out of those 5 continues, and you're not restarting the level. You're restarting the entire act. All that progress, gone, because of a regional change most players in 1991 had no way of knowing about. The game keeps the trilogy's tradition of flying enemies designed purely to knock you into pits, replacing the original game's infamous birds with mechanical flying shrimp that do the exact same job. Same function, different sprite. Ninja Gaiden 3 punishes you twice. Once through the enemies themselves, and once through a continue system quietly tuned to be harsher for one region than the other. Number 3. Battletoads, 1991. You already know what we're about to say. Turbo Tunnel. Battletoads, developed by Rare for NES, only needs 3 levels to break an entire generation of players. A published 1991 strategy guide called it, in print, one of the toughest challenges of any NES game. And that's not hyperbole. That's a printed assessment from the same year the game launched. Turbo Tunnel is a high-speed obstacle course on speeder bikes, where walls and gaps arrive faster than most players can naturally react to. There's no reading it in real time. You memorize the pattern through repeated failure, over and over, until your reflexes catch up to a sequence you've now died to a dozen times. What makes it worse is where it sits. Level 3. Out of 13. This wall shows up almost immediately, which is exactly why so many players never saw anything past it. Battletoads didn't wear you down over a long campaign. It stopped you cold in the game's opening act and dared you to keep going. Number 2. Ghosts and Goblins, 1985 and 1986. Ghosts and Goblins started as a Capcom arcade cabinet in 1985, deliberately tuned to be difficult enough to keep quarters flowing. And when it ported to NES in 1986, almost none of that difficulty got softened. The mechanic that defines this game is simple to explain and brutal to experience. 2 hits, that's all you get. The first hit strips your character, Arthur, out of his armor, leaving him running around in his underwear. The second hit kills him outright. In a game throwing enemies at you from every angle, including from behind and from underground, 2 hits disappears fast. The reason this ranks above Battletoads is the consistency of the punishment. Turbo Tunnel is one brutal section in an otherwise manageable game. Ghosts and Goblins is brutal from the first screen to the last, with a punishment threshold so low that a single moment of bad positioning anywhere in the game can end your run. Number 1. Silver Surfer, 1990. Here it is. And if you've played this game, you already know why it's at the top. Silver Surfer on NES doesn't give you 2 hits like Ghosts and Goblins. It doesn't give you a health bar that drains over time like Gauntlet. It gives you exactly 1 mistake, and then it's over. Contact with an enemy, a projectile, or in a lot of cases the background scenery itself, kills you instantly. No armor stage, no warning hit, just gone. The Surfer's hitbox is large relative to the tight corridors the levels force you through, which means the margin for error isn't just small, it's often mathematically unfair. And when you die, the game doesn't let you keep what you've earned. You're reset to an earlier checkpoint with your collected power-ups stripped away, so every death costs you both the attempt and the progress you'd built toward surviving the next one. Silver Surfer is consistently ranked among the hardest games ever released on the NES, and the reason is simple to state, even if it's brutal to experience. One touch, anywhere, on anything, ends you. That's not a difficulty setting. That's a design philosophy, and it's the reason this game sits at number 1. Now, we already know some of you are going to argue this order. Some of you are going to say, Ghosts and Goblins deserves the top spot, because getting a full playthrough with only 2 hits per life is a harder overall standard to hold than Silver Surfer's instant deaths. Some of you are going to say Battletoads should be higher, purely because Turbo Tunnel broke more households than any other single level on this list. And some of you played Shadowrun and are going to say resource-based punishment that follows you for hours is worse than any instant death, because at least an instant death doesn't cost you money. You'll never get back. All of those arguments hold up. That's exactly why this list is worth having. 10 games, 4 different platforms, arcades built to eat your quarters, The Atari 2600 punishing you with terrain before anyone understood what terrain should even do in a game. The NES turning small mechanical choices into system-defining cruelty, and the Genesis finding a slower, quieter way to make you pay for every mistake over time. Different tools, same result. You made one wrong move, and the game made sure you felt it. And here's the thing about all of it. We kept playing anyway. We fed the quarters into Gauntlet, even knowing the timer was rigged against us. We memorized Turbo Tunnel because giving up wasn't an option once your friends had already gotten further than you. We died in Silver Surfer 40 times in a row and picked the controller back up a 41st. There was no walkthrough waiting for us. No frame-by-frame breakdown on a screen in our pocket. Just the game, the controller, and whatever we could figure out ourselves. So tell us where we got this wrong. Should Ghosts and Goblins have taken the top spot over Silver Surfer? Is Shadowrun's slow economic punishment worse than anything that kills you instantly? Did we leave off a game that broke you personally? Something from an arcade, an Atari system, or a console we didn't even mention? Drop it below. We read every comment on these lists, and this is exactly the debate this channel exists for. If you want more of this, breakdowns of the games that shaped a generation of players the hard way, subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for watching. Now go dig out whatever old console is still sitting in a closet somewhere. You've got a rematch waiting for you.